In the Capitolo case, we can really see where there have to be limits on the justification defense. In Capitolo, the defendants were they were trespassing at a power plant that the defendants objected to being created because they were anti-nuclear power, and so they were trying to use their law breakingness to try to encourage this power plant not to bring radioactive materials or have radioactive materials at this particular place. Now, the idea of a justification defense is that two things. Well, one, it has to be a very clear evil that you are preventing by some lesser evil. So the greater evil has to be one that's obvious. And the question of whether this action has to be taken has to be, this couldn't be a debatable subject. But then in addition, there have to be no other legal mechanisms for this. So, I mean, consider our nuclear power plant. Some people think it's safe. Some people think it's a great idea, that it's more environmentally friendly, that our only real fear comes from nuclear accidents. Other people are worried about what you do with the nuclear waste, even if there are no accidents, but then they're also concerned about accidents and such. So the appropriateness of nuclear power itself is very much the subject of debate. So when you're trying to prevent something from becoming a nuclear power plant, whether there is in fact an evil at all that you are trying to prevent is itself debatable. And then certainly whether the trespass will achieve this goal and is itself a lesser evil, that's then also then subject to debate. And the court says, look, there was nothing about their presence there that would have stopped them from having the radioactive materials there. They were already at the facility. And so the court says that there was nothing immediate that could have been stopped by the lawlessness here. And I would just add that because this is absolutely a debatable issue of public policy, that this is something that the court can't resolve in this way. That the court cannot conclude that there was some evil that was being abated or attempted to be abated by the trespassers. That whether it's evil at all is something that we can only really determine through the legislative and the legislative process, really, that is informed by science and such. That's not to say that there aren't real issues that ought to be considered, but this is very much not something that fits into our paradigm of this has to happen now or some horrible thing is going to immediately happen. This is the question of whether a nuclear power plant ought to be built and whether that the potential for those concerns to outweigh competing concerns. I mean, not only is that whole subject debatable, but that's almost the very reason why we have legislatures to resolve these complex questions of values that don't present easy answers and that require a great deal of deliberation. And in fact, the court noted in this case that these folks did not act immediately to stop something that was going to happen right away, or that could be prevented right away. These folks were very careful, methodical, and planned in their activity. So they may want to do this as a matter of civil disobedience. They may want to draw attention to the issue, and in some sort of moral sense, that might be legitimate. But there's not a criminal justification defense to something like this because there's not a clear choice of evils, and there's not a clear resolution of how your action in this case by trespassing would have abated even that which is a debatable evil, certainly debatable, at best debatable. I mean, in fact, there's a lot out there to suggest that these plants are are actually good overall for our energy needs. In any event, that's much like the first case we looked at with the mom going to get um, her medicine for her kid. Clear case of justification. This is a pretty clear case of not justification.